Welcome to B&H's reoccurring series for NAB On Demand, where we interview industry creatives. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Josh Rubenstein, who is a video editor whose credits include documentary and commercial works for Vice, Netflix, and much more. Josh, thanks for joining us today. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, great. We have a lot to talk about. We would like to understand a little bit about your workflow and get into the mind of an editor and maybe some of the technique and the technology of an editor. Let's start from your background. Tell us a little bit about how you started in video editing and how you ended up at Disney.
Sure. So this is kind of the pitch I always kind of give of just I guess it starts of who I am as a person. I'm kind of like a perfectionist, and I was very serious about like culinary arts and cooking back in high school. I was very serious about like cooking class and making sure that everything was made correctly, and because I really wanted that to be my career for a while. And then if you're familiar with the video game Halo 3, that came out back in 2007. So I was sophomore in high school, and I got just enveloped with the game. It was the first time I ever really fell in love with video games. And I started to be aware of the YouTube community that was surrounding this game. It was Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4. And there was a lot of creative minds. It was kind of like the birth of this universe I never knew existed. And I was like, I want to try to make some of these montages that I'm seeing. It's like a really close niche community, and I really want to see what it's all about. So I started to get involved with the tech. I started to get involved with understanding capture cards and how things work. And Halo 3 had a theater mode, so that made the capabilities endless. And I started really getting into these montages. And a lot of my friends didn't really understand what exactly I was doing. And a lot of questions came from them of just like, I thought you wanted to do more culinary arts and all these things. And it turns out what I really like to do is I didn't like cooking that much at all. What I really liked was the presentations on the plates of, the steak goes here, the garnish and all these things. It was being a food stylist in a sense and presenting things to people. And so I ended up cutting these montages of like either like incredible gameplay or something like that. And then I just kind of fell into it. And I believe the breakthrough moment was when this video game as Black Ops 1 came out. I think it was like 2010, 2011. And that game also had a theater mode. And I remember one day I was sitting in my room, and I remember I picked up these two guns, and the way that the character picked up the guns, it was like a 360 animation, these two revolvers. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool to put some like melodic music to it and do all these things. And I wanted to be, like a 30-second video. And at the time I had like 100 YouTube subscribers, friends and family. And then I started to like edit this video, and then it just kind of grew upon itself, and it ended up becoming a 3 to 4 minute video. And I put some like nice, like chill melodic, dubstep or chill step to it. And I uploaded it, and then I tweeted it out to a couple big names in the Call of Duty community, just saying like, hey, just like check out, my work, any feedback is great. And I went to sleep. This was like May 2011. And then I woke up the very next morning, and apparently while I was sleeping, the video got like retweeted out by I think the creator of Optic Gaming, who's like one of the biggest gaming organizations, I guess, in esports. And the video had 45,000 views. And I was like, okay, so what is this? Like, what exactly did I do here? And so the video was called Beauty of Call of Duty. And I think it took a step back at, and I think it was kind of like a new wave of showcasing gameplay. A lot of the montages you kind of saw on YouTube back then were about like, killing and montaging and just like how many, kill streaks you can get and all these like intense gameplay. And so what I was doing when I was in theater mode, I was realizing and understanding there was a lot of artistry and a lot of character animations that were often overlooked. And I think that it was kind of like the detail of the game from the developers and graphic artists that's just in the game. You know, like a clock would be on the wall, but the hand would be moving on the clock. It'd be ticking. And so I started making these videos about showcasing the beauty inside of these games when everyone originally knew them for, you know, the kill streaks and the montages. And so I just started to showcase that, and people enjoyed it. I got featured on like the homepage of Call of Duty. That was like the peak of my life. And got to know a lot of the you know, the community managers over there. And I think from that moment, I kind of then made the switch from culinary hospitality arts into filmmaking and video editing. And I was like, wow, this is like really cool, and I can like manipulate certain things to have people feel certain ways. And it really kind of opened up like a huge doorway for me, and I'm glad I was able to discover that so early in my career. That was like the beginning. Yeah.
So you started on YouTube, more or less.
Yes, I was making skits in my room, you know, real life skits or whatever. And then, but I think really it started out on YouTube, and I started to get these messages from people who were like, "Oh, you inspired me. You did all these things for me to start doing video editing," and it really kind of opened up a huge door, you know, into what this world is, and it became really cool to be one of those names now in the community, which is great.
It's always really fun to learn what you're capable of, right? Like a lot of times we have a completely different career path and we don't know that being an editor, for example, is even an option or something that we would love to do until we actually try it. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, you kind of have that epiphany, like I can do this. I can do this for my career. I can make money off of this. Um, and did that end up taking you to film school, or were you completely self-taught?
Well, it was all self-taught. I started on like iMovie,
Yeah.
and then I started to dive more into Sony Vegas, After Effects, started learning some plugins there, and then eventually got on Premiere, Avid, and all those. And I think it was the summer going into my college where I was going there originally for hospitality. Didn't really even know what that was. So, and then I was like, you know what? Let's see if they have a film program, which they did. And I just switched my majors going into film school, not really knowing anything about anything, and you know, just knowing that I edit videos for YouTube, and that's about it. And yeah, I switched my majors going into school.
And what was, coming fresh out of film school or even during, what was your first big break? What was your first big job?
Well, I quickly learned in film school that they're going to teach you the tools, but no one's going to hold your hand in the industry. I've been, you know, even continuing to learn now that it's a lot of network based. It's how well you work with people. It's how eager you are, how dedicated you are, and also there's talent on top of that. And so I essentially learned a lot of the tools. I edited a lot of shorts. I learned like many programs. I made my own thesis film. I edited another thesis film. And I think a good first break was one of my professors. He actually cut one of his films in a post house in New York. They were called Outpost Digital, and I believe that they're the post production facility for Radical Media. And they did a lot of like documentaries like Nina Simone, um, and a couple others like Made in America documentary and the Tony Robbins documentary. And it was really cool to start to understand the vast world of assistant editing and how things have really changed in, you know, in recent years, from like tape to becoming digital, and really understanding that um, organization and workflow is the quintessential first thing that you must understand as a video editor, because I've been in many roles in my life where that always came secondary, and that's where problems arise. So I think my first break, or I wouldn't say my big break, but it was definitely a good break to get involved in this facility. I learned a lot, and that's where I really honed in that organization and workflow come first. And then from there, I think my first really big break was when I transitioned to Vice Media. Um, that's actually kind of a funny story because saw the position online, I applied, got the job. It was a staff assistant video editor position for Viceland. Had no idea what Viceland was, and so I was the assistant video editor for like 4 or 5 editors who were making, launch spots or promos for the network. And um, I didn't really realize how lucky I was at the time because when I finally got on the team, we went out for a happy hour one night, and my producer was like, "Oh, so how'd you get this job?" And I was like, "Oh, I applied online." And they're like, "Really?" Because usually it usually works through like networking and who you know and how you know them, but I guess you must have had some really impressive stuff, or you kind of like hit the nail on the head like at the right time. And so here you are. So I really understood that I was very lucky to have that opportunity. And I wanted to do everything in my power to stay there and to help grow the team as much as possible. And it was really exciting to see the toddler stages of Viceland to what it is now. It was being creatively led by Spike Jones, who I had the pleasure of meeting. And then we had so many other amazing talent that were just in-house. We had Ellen Page and her friend Ian for a very progressive show called Gaycation.
Mhm.
You had Action Bronson with That's Delicious. That's the name of the show. And a lot of cool aspects of this industry I was being exposed to that I never knew existed, especially in the world of TV. So it was really cool to kind of like break the news to the world and have a say of like seeing this stuff before it goes live. And it was a really exciting time in my career to actually um, be at the forefront of what Vice is now, I guess. So very exciting.
So um you ended up editing for Vice, kind of making your way up the chain a little bit there, and then you helped develop some of their social media videos as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I started there. I wore many hats at Vice, and I started as a staff assistant editor, like I said, for Viceland, and then I eventually moved over to the .com side of things. I was doing some mini documentaries, and I actually helped launch the I think it was called Shorties at the time. It was their short form social media team. It was like me and a handful of other people. Uh, this was during the transition when everything started to get square, like all the videos started to get square on social media. And this was kind of the launch of this brand new team of um, of the capabilities of social media video and what was really to come, because I think Facebook changed their algorithm to have more social video, and things were living not on YouTube anymore, and this is when kind of like Instagram started to become bigger, and this was a way of advertising larger spots on um, the .com side of things, but also advertise articles. It's a way to get people to get more interested in certain articles. Rather than you having to have 10 minutes or 15 minutes to read an article, why not watch it down in like a 3-minute concise video that's entertaining?
Right.
So it was really exciting to be on the forefront. And of course, organization came first on the founder level, and then everything came up after that. And through that, every little step throughout my career, I picked up a lot of different things along the way, and I certainly learned a lot in this position.
And now you're employed with Disney, where you were telling me that you cut promos and trailers for ESPN and some of the other Disney platforms. Tell us a little bit about the work you do with them.
Yeah, so working for Disney streaming services has been like a dream so far. It's been amazing. And a lot of the stuff that I do, I'm a part of the motion team, and we advertise what's on the platform, what's to come, any cool promos, and it's really exciting to be a part of an organization that is like the world knows about, and it's really an exciting time because Disney Plus is very young, and so is the team, but we're building it, and it's just been a very exciting time working on a lot of things. It's really interesting to understand the back end of how workflow is for Disney. Um, for instance, I just came out with a an NFL on ESPN Plus spot that was actually just shown on TV. And another spot that I worked on, one of the first spots was a Star Wars spot of advertising for May the 4th, that all 9 episodes are available on Disney Plus. So it was really cool, but we had a bit of a challenge because it was a 15-second spot, and how can we advertise that all 9 films are available in such a quick time frame? So I worked with my senior video editor and a couple other team members to really hone down um, on an idea of in each movie there's a similarity of having them open up their lightsabers. So what we did was we had in order from 1 through 9, each a certain character open up their lightsaber, and that was kind of like a good homage to I guess an Easter egg. Depending on what order you watch it, 1 through 9 or 4, 5,
Mhm.
6, whatever order's correct. But we had that, and it just worked, and it clicked, and it was really sound effects heavy, which kind of led the piece. And those 15 seconds really meant a lot to me because um, just like being a part of this company is kind of like where everything has led so far in my career, and I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity. And yeah, I think I pinch myself often of how cool it is to be cutting some of the content that I have access to.
And probably to be in the same room as a lot of other creatives. I mean, I think that that 15-second spot is a great example of it. And this is one of my frequent questions to editors because I always get a different answer. I mean, editing can be both very creative but also very practical. Do you consider your approach to video editing as a creative approach or more as like a standpoint of an engineer where you're here to cut and create a very kind of practical video?
Well, I think it's a little of both. I think it depends on what exactly I'm cutting. I've learned that social video is cut kind of in a backwards way. So it's kind of how can I get your attention, and how can I retain the viewer there and get the video across. It's not like something that you already sit down and watch, a movie that is going to be good. It's something that um, it's kind of like, hey, look over here, but we want to inform you, but also keep you entertained at the same time. And I'm cutting a feature film right now on the side, and that's got a completely different way of cutting, because cutting like 20-minute scenes, you have different breakdowns of how you of how you cut it, how you engineer those scenes. And so with everything that I do, I get very granular. In the first couple passes of really watching everything down, understanding all the footage, choosing the selects, choosing the super selects. I know that everyone has their own little workflow, but for me, I'm a perfectionist, and sometimes I have to pull myself out of that when it comes to um, creating something from scratch. And usually, it could be led from a music choice. It could be led, sometimes. It could be led from sound effects. And one of the things that I really learned, especially when I was at Vice, was assistant editing, because I was able to get these projects back from the editors. And it's really cool to get an editor's timeline and really see how their mind works. It's really looking inside of someone's mind and their thought process. And so, using, let's say, a reverse cymbal sound effect for a transition. I never knew that was even a thing. I just, I never really understood how to transition from scenes. And so when you're dealing with promos or when you're dealing with longer form spots, there are certain things that I pick up along the way, either watching shows or just how other editors work, of how I implement that with my own style in my own timelines as well.
So let's get into workflow a little bit. Tell us about um, your approach to a workflow, and let's say you have all your assets organized in the software and you have a blank timeline. Where do you start the process of creative editing? What's the first thing that goes on your timeline?
Right. So I guess I'll use this feature film that I've been cutting on the side. It was I can easily see that it was a 20-minute scene, and it could be a little overwhelming when you're kind of staring down the barrel of like 6 7 hours of footage, and having multiple conversations with the director and the other editors on the team of how they want to showcase the work, and reading the script over and over and over and over again, really kind of puts an idea in your mind of the kind of theme and mood that needs to be accomplished. And so, watch down all the footage, watch it down again, then choose your selects. And then what you do is, or what I did was, I broke down the scene into 10 different mini scenes. And so I kind of just like pulled different moments, different kind of verite and different kind of reaction shots. And it really depends on what exactly I want to showcase and how I want to showcase the characters from the previous scenes that I've already cut. And I use a lot of influence from a lot of the movies that the director and the editor kind of, or the other editors like already watch. And so I pretty much just like pull everything into numerous timelines, and I go to town on, you know, letting things be organic and grow as much as possible, and having the the pacing kind of establish itself. And then I want to have everything breathe as long as possible, and if anything, then I can cut it down afterwards. So I think for a film, for me, it's really about getting everything in the timeline in the first couple passes, and making sure nothing, every stone is unturned. It can be very granular at first, but I want to leave it open for discussion with the director and the other editors. For instance, I had like a 2 hour phone call last night with the lead editor and the director on this, of like where we can go from this scene and different pickup shots. So it was very exciting to kind of see, of where I started to where I am now with this scene. And I think that workflows vary per project. Like if I'm making a promo and I have a certain amount of time to showcase this promo, I want to make sure I have the very best, most exciting, visually attracting thing in the first 5 seconds. Either it be a soundbite or something, that it could be eye catching. That's why it was very easy to work at Vice, because they have a lot of eye catching content, and a lot of cool sound bites and stuff like that. So it was very exciting and very easy to kind of pull things together for the pieces I was working over there. But it also depends on how you see it as the viewer, and how the viewer will be invested in that piece. If it's a film, you can let things breathe organically and kind of unfold on their own, rather than it being a promo spot when you have a certain amount of time. And it's kind of like getting their attention, but having them engage on their own. Rather, I want them to engage because they're interested in the piece. And I think one of the most important things to me as an editor is empathy, and creating that connection through platforms. And I don't want to, from films to promos, I just don't want to be, I don't want the spots that they see to be something that's forgettable. I want them to be some sort of empathetic towards the spot of something that they can remember. And I think emotion is one of the big reasons why I do what I do, is because I can, manipulate certain things to have people feel a certain way, or the way that I want to portray the story. And it makes me feel good knowing that I impacted someone's life. And I think another big moment in my career was when I had the pleasure of showing my thesis film. And there's a sad moment in the film, and people came up to me afterwards, after we showcased it in a theater for thesis screening night. People of all ages came up to me, and they're like, I have to admit, like, I cried during that moment. And that was like a breakthrough in my like life, of just saying like, wow, like I actually, like I set a goal, and I had an intention, and I actually, hit that goal. And it was very eye-opening for me to know that I can kind of like have people react a certain way that I intend to. Um, so I think to go back to your original question, like organization and workflow is very important. And depending on how the timing is and how long I have for each spot and how things I want to unfold, like I think that will dictate of how I choose my selects and the organization process going forward.
Right. And it's interesting, exactly like you're saying, understanding the impact that you can have as an editor in terms of being able to tell a story and kind of manipulate somebody's psychology to a certain extent, control their emotion. I know when I was editing and shooting, the more I edited, the better I directed. When you know how all the puzzle pieces fit together at the end, it gives you better insight into which puzzle pieces, which video clips, and which moments are really important in capturing up front in order to progress and tell the story. Um, for me personally, I leaned a little bit more towards directing as opposed to editing. Have you had your hand at directing? Is that something that you're interested in trying, or you think there might be a natural progression towards directing in the future?
The only real time I've actually directed was on set for my thesis film. It was it was kind of nerve wracking, not only because it was my first time directing, but I was my film, so I was in charge of everyone on set, of getting them fed, and all these other things. But I think if it was just my sole job to direct, I think I would have enjoyed it more. And it was also a pleasure to be on set and being the editor as well of that film because I could manipulate it and do certain things that could benefit me in the post process. Um, I think for directing, the next film that I'm actually writing right now, I think it would be really beneficial to co-direct with someone else to kind of share the vision and to kind of lean onto of someone who may not see something in the moment that I'm not seeing. And I think because I directed something that I wrote, that it gives me, a skewed version of what I want the film to be rather than a director who may want to approach the film as a viewer or someone else. And I think directing, I'll definitely give it another shot, but I think at this point in my career, I know for certain that I want to expand more into post production and video editing.
And a lot of editors are, extremely technical, find a lot of solace in learning multiple different softwares. I think the natural progression might be to start, kind of like you said, start with iMovie or something simple, and then go to Vegas, a little bit more technical, and then get into Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro. And then, once you kind of master that, you get a little bit more technical, or lean more towards the industry standard, which seems to be, I mean, it used to be Avid, and I guess we could still say it is, but even DaVinci Resolve is now starting to become a standard. So there, this universe is filled with many different softwares, and we haven't even touched on CGI and After Effects and Blender and a lot of these other graphics intensive softwares. um, Within this universe, what do you master? What do you find interesting? Are you constantly expanding your knowledge and trying to learn all these different softwares, or do you just want to master one and kind of focus on that?
Well, I think it's really important as anyone in post production is to know as much as possible, to know as many different languages, within these programs, like let it be Avid or Premiere. I know that Avid is very important on the narrative side of things and the longer form side of things. Premiere is mainly used for my own experience with a lot of the jobs that I've had, and like I know Premiere like the back of my hand. I know Avid, and I think it's really good to understand those languages because if you're working with someone who doesn't know or knows something that you won't or sorry don't understand, then that could be kind of like a speed bump in the process. So I think it's really good to understand everything as much as possible. I've worked in I worked in After Effects quite a bit. So I'm happy to discuss and understand certain workflows with graphic artists that I work with. And I think just knowing all of these different languages, because I think at this point in the industry, like it's it's these are all just tools. It's really great to know all these tools, but I think there's two sides of it. There's that creative, and there's also the storytelling element of it. But it's how you use the tools and how quickly you can manipulate keyboard shortcuts and how less you can use your mouse and it's whatever workflow works for you. But I think expanding your knowledge daily, especially with all new technology, like you said, like DaVinci now has an editing platform, and using DaVinci of how to prep for color and sound is very important. I think it's very good, especially as an editor, to know the process from the toddler state, from the beginning, all the way to final finishing. Because if you want to have a say in your film, or if you want to be aware of how like a spot is born and released out into the world, I think it's very important to know everything about in that encompassing world.
Now, we likely have a lot of maybe amateur video editors or people who love video editing tuning in and who are working on their own process. In Adobe Premiere, let's say, what's like one tip or trick or kind of breakthrough moment in Premiere, maybe a keyboard shortcut, like you mentioned, that really changed the way that you edit or sped up the process?
Yeah. So, I think I'm just going to go off of keyboard shortcuts. I think a lot of things can be saved, or a lot of time can be saved with keyboard shortcuts. And if you notice yourself while you're editing that you're often clicking, this one button to activate it a lot, and then going back to your timeline, you can easily manipulate that into a keyboard shortcut. So, what I was doing a lot with this film is that when you have so many different layers of audio, there was like six, layers that, excuse me, is that it could be very strenuous to move them, to keep highlighting and moving things down. And so there's this tool in Premiere, I think, which you can highlight the audio and the video and loop them together. And so there's a tool that you can like toggle to have the audio and the video loop together. And so I often found myself clicking back and forth, and like it may not seem like a lot of time, but a lot of that time adds up. So I think, I made the keyboard shortcut L on my keyboard to activate that. If I need to be more precise with certain cuts, I untoggle N. N is kind of like the snapping or unsnapping of certain things. So I think it's really understanding the language and the keyboard shortcuts, and really optimizing it for you, and really honing in, because time is a precious thing, as we all know. And so I think getting projects out the door quicker, but to the best of your knowledge, or sorry, to the best of your ability, so you understand how the program works and the keyboard shortcuts. Like, you would have that extra 5 minutes to do a one final watch down rather than kind of rushing it out the door. And I think that keyboard shortcuts is a very important factor to focus on, especially when you start. And I think it's good because learning a program, it may seem overwhelming at first, but it's like muscle memory. And I think when you start out, in the beginning, and you have keyboard shortcuts, it's very, very important for the workflow.
So for those who may not know yet, the keys JKL are kind of one of the first keyboard shortcuts that you learn in, especially Adobe Premiere. They come standard. J is reverse and fast reverse if you press it multiple times. K is pause, and L is forward. These three keys will help you navigate your timeline pretty frequently. But you said, screw that, I'm using L for something else.
Oh no, so L is used. I think it's used for both. I've actually was able to use L for both. I think,
Do you hold down shift
yeah,
or
I think it's like
yeah,
Shift L, something like
yeah.
that. Yes. So I definitely keep the JKL function, because that's what I use for choosing selects, because JKL is right near the I and O keys, which is in and out. So it's very easy that while I watch down selects, I never touch my mouse, because it's just, watching down and going up and down, you have to choosing your selects and raising things up of what you want to keep, what you don't want to keep. So yeah, I think it was Command L or Shift L. So yeah,
Mhm.
very important to note that as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I know some people like to use hardware shuttles or things to forward and reverse and kind of navigate their timeline, but you're just completely on keyboard, correct?
Yeah, it's whatever works for you. It's whatever you want. People, use Wacom's. I use an ergonomic mouse. It's whatever you want that's best for your workflow and setup and what's optimized of what you can do in a certain amount of time.
Now, you spoke to us a little bit about what drives you as a video editor and the passion that fuels you. Is there any, and you spoke about some of these projects, um, are there any specific projects that really stand out for your portfolio that you're particularly proud of, or that really exemplify the work that you do or the passion that you have for video editing?
Right. So yeah, there's this one video that I always kind of go back to, and I didn't really know of how much weight it held at the time. So I was back at when I was back at Vice, I was on this team called Vice Labs, and they did a lot of funny commercials like Man on the Street, and it was a really experimental type of show. Um, and they were also doing like Action Bronson, with Ancient Aliens and all these like fun shows on Viceland. And I was in the commercial side of things, and I was an assistant editor looking to have any break. And I think that a lot of this industry, and I think a lot of industries are about opportunity meets experience. And so I knew how to cut, and I was starting to cut a couple social things on the side when I was there. This was before I went over to the .com and started to cut, for more social. But it was a Sunday. I think it was like 2017, and it was when the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting happened, and that kind of shook the world. And it happened on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, and I got to work on a Monday, and the team was completely swamped with whatever they were working on, getting out videos or TV shows. And so my boss came up to me and he said, "Hey, obviously you heard about this event. We had a film crew go over to Stonewall to film the vigil and to just for camaraderie, and we really we don't have any video editors available right now, so you're it. So we want you to cut a 60-second piece that is Vice's response to this horrific event." And I'm like, okay, all right, let's get me in an editing room. So they got me in an editing room, and I went through all the footage. And I think my boss popped in around like noon. And I think this was one of those days where like you're just sitting there for like 10 hours, don't eat, go to the bathroom whenever you can. But it was kind of like a rush job. But I was really excited to have this opportunity. And I remember my boss popped in around noon. He goes, "Hey, how you doing?" And I said, I'm doing great. Like I'm watching on footage, putting things together. And he's like, "Okay, well, around like 2 or 3 o'clock, we're gonna have one of our video editors, pop in and kind of see, the progress that you're making, and most likely kind of hand the project off to them to finish." 3 o'clock rolls around, and the cut is like 90% done at that point. And the editor comes in, watches it down, and he looks at my boss at the time, and he goes, I should not touch anything. I feel like Josh is on a roll here, and I feel like I would kind of mess up the project. So I think we should just kind of let him finish, this video. And I was like, heck yeah. So, um, so I ended up finishing the video, and I ended up prepping it for color and mix. Going back and forth between video editing and assistant editing. I got the video out, I think, at like 10 o'clock at night. And this was when I was commuting from New Jersey. So I commuted all the way back home, an hour and a half, and I was eating dinner with my parents. I had the TV on at Viceland, facing, the kitchen table. And the commercial that I was working with all day with, so intimately, and knowing all the ins and outs and all the frames of it, was showing on national TV. And it was a big event for me because I saw something from the beginning to its fruition. And that kind of opened up so many doors for me, just knowing that, I can have such an impact on myself, but so many millions of people. And anything was kind of possible at that point. And it was really cool to kind of see something from the beginning of that day, 12 hours later, to seeing it, you know, on TV, which was really a huge deal for me. And that kind of set the bar really high for me. And it also gave me a lot of confidence as an editor, knowing that I'm capable of doing work like this. Um, And plus, like having a spot like that and having like a brand's response to such a horrific event was really moving to myself as well.
Absolutely. And it's something that only drives you a little bit more. And once you, when you have meaning and you feel like you're contributing to something and you're making an impact, when you feel like you have something to say, um, that's something that's really inspiring, you know? So it's, you can start from cutting Halo videos together. But then once you get a taste of the impact that you can potentially have on the world with video editing, um, you know, the world is your oyster, and you can really drive yourself to hopefully create some change, you know, do something
Yeah,
pretty impactful. That's really powerful.
yeah. It was it's really important to like what I've learned is that um you just have to keep pushing, and if you're really passionate about something, you will do everything in your power to learn as much as you can about it. One thing I didn't mention when I was editing or I was talking about me editing Halo videos, I was made fun of a lot. I was made fun of a lot by people who are now my fans and friends and supporters, because I think that it was so new that they were making fun of what I was doing. It was very nerdy and it was very new and very niche. And so I was very it didn't really feel good for a long time, but I pushed through all of that, and I knew that what I was doing was for where I am now. And I think for anyone who is interested in video editing or has a lot of naysayers or haters or whatever it is, that means that you're doing something good. That means that you are fulfilling something inside of you that you want to either learn more about or progress in. Having haters, like, not all that, I guess, to retract that, like, having haters is not always a good thing, but it actually fueled me into leading me where I am now. And so I'm thankful for all of those people, um, for giving me a lot of the fire, which which pushed me to switch my major to go into film school, which got my break, which kind of snowballed into where I am now. So I'm very grateful for my beginnings. And as I'm doing this interview, I'm actually back in my room right now where it all started, where I wrote my thesis film. I know you can't see it; it's Tatooine, but yeah, I'm back, at my parents' house right now, working from home, and it's really come full circle, especially with this interview. Of I wrote my thesis film here. I started my very first projects here, and so being able to edit for an amazing company like Disney is, it's great just to see kind of from a macro level that, like, all of this kind of bears its own fruit. So if you're really dedicated and you really love something, you'll do everything in your power to progress and to do as much as you can to fulfill your goals in that.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for that nice little end cap, Josh. We're about out of time. Tell us a little bit about where the next project that you're working on, or where people can find you.
I think where a lot of the work I have right now is on my website, joshrube.com. There's a lot of interesting stuff on there, like mini documentaries I've done. That Vice spot is on the homepage that I spoke about. Um, and a lot of other exciting stuff I can't really talk about for Disney, but really, really cool stuff. So, follow me on socials or anything that, or on my website mainly, to see any updates in regarding those works as well.
Wonderful. You heard it from the man himself. Make sure you go to joshrube.com to stay in touch with Josh and to see the next projects that he's working on, and hopefully give him a hire if you're a large production company that has a lot of money to spend on important video editors. Well, that'll do it for us today. Thank you so much for tuning in, Josh. Thanks for taking the time this morning to speak with us, and we will see you next time.